Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah amma ba'd. This year, 1442 Hijri, 2021 Gregorian, Ramadan is going to be a little bit different because there are certain things that are going to be in place this Ramadan that perhaps wasn't in place here in the UK at least in 2020. And one of those things is the COVID test. A lot of our children in education, even some adults, will be required to do the test. They'll be tested frequently, perhaps even on a daily basis during the month of Ramadan. So the question now is, what is the ruling on their fast if they are asked to take a test? Now, in order to understand what the ruling is and what the mas'ala is, we have to look at how the ulama have looked at it classically in the books of fiqh. And nothing can be derived today except that something has already been established previously, and it is up to the ulama, the contemporary ulama, the scholars, to make that comparison and draw that analogy for us. So before we get to the answer, let's look at what has been stated previously. Now, the majority of the ulama have said anything which reaches the stomach, even if it's not food, anything which reaches the stomach invalidates the fast. The Shafi'i madhab have said anything which reaches the throat invalidates the fast. So that's the first difference that we've got between the majority and the Shafi'i. So the Shafi'is have said anything which... The reason why they said anything which reaches the throat is because they've said once it gets to the throat, it's not likely that it will come back up again. Therefore, the throat becomes the standard, that becomes the benchmark. Whereas the majority have said the stomach. The Hanafis have said anything which reaches the stomach, yes. But something which is a bit different in their madhab, they have said it has to remain settled in the stomach. And if it lam yastaqir fil batan, if it doesn't remain settled in the stomach, it doesn't break the fast. So, I mean, you can use imagination here. Imagine something's been inserted into your body, it reaches the stomach. If it is not something that's going to stay there and it comes back out again, then it doesn't invalidate the fast with the Hanafis. The Malikis, for me, and this is again very, very relative, every single scholar will have their own opinion, but this is the view of Ibn Taymiyyah and Uthaymeen as well. The Malikis have said anything which reaches the stomach, but it has to be something which is going to nourish the body. And if it reaches the stomach and it is of a nourishment, it's going to provide, some strength to the body, some nourishment, some nutritional value, it brings some nutritional value to the body, then it takes the same ruling as food and drink. Otherwise, it doesn't. Because Allah says in the Quran, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ. Eat and drink until the Fajr time begins. Eat and drink. So anything which is not food and drink, if it enters into the body, it doesn't nullify the fast, even if it reaches the stomach. And this is the view of the Maliki. Now with this, we learn two very important things that the contemporary ulama have been able to derive for us. Number one, the swabbing of the nose, of the mouth, even if it goes to the throat, if it is dry, it doesn't invalidate the fast, because it doesn't enter into the stomach itself, and it doesn't have any particles on that swab which will reach the stomach. And even if we were to say, for argument's sake, it had something, some kind of liquid or substance which is going to be on the swab itself, it doesn't take the same ruling as food and drink. Therefore, many of the ulama have looked at this mas'ala. I personally have asked Sheikh Badr al-Utaybi, one of our teachers in Riyadh, and other, fiqh councils around the world have looked at the issue of coronavirus testing during the month of Ramadan or for the person who is fasting, and they have said it does not invalidate the fast, based on what we have said here from the views of the different madhabs. There's another thing that's going to come out as well this Ramadan, which is the validity of the fast if a person needs to take an injection. Now, based on what we have mentioned from the books of fiqh, it's the same thing when it comes to injections. If the injection is going to provide nourishment, some kind of strength to the body that something food and drink would perhaps provide, it would then invalidate the fast. But the COVID injection does quite the opposite from what I've been told. It, actually, weakens the body, it weakens the arm, it hurts. It could even bring some symptoms with it, like headaches and nausea and tiredness, etc. So it does completely the opposite of food and drink. Therefore, as a hukm, from what we learned and this is the view of the Mufti, also Sheikh Abdul Aziz Al Sheikh, he said that vaccinations and the injection of the COVID, the COVID vaccination, it does not invalidate the fast. Therefore, what we have established, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, if the COVID testing does not involve any substance being inserted into the body and then it reaching the stomach, it does not invalidate the fast, according to all of the madhahib. But let's say hypothetically if it did, it still wouldn't invalidate the fast according to the correct opinion, bearing in mind that is extremely subjective and relative. But when it comes to the injection, it's a lot more easier, it's a lot more understandable that the scholars would say that it doesn't invalidate the fast because it doesn't take the same ruling as food and drink. In actual fact, they may even have the concession not to fast that day if they find difficulty. And there's one last thing that I wanted to mention, which is an area which needs to be explored on a separate occasion completely because of the fact that it's very, very complicated and detailed. But the ulama are generally agreed. Now, this has to be understood correctly, what I'm about to say. The ulama are generally agreed that if there is something of a position that they have from the fiqhi, outlook, if that thing is going to cause hardship, and there is a genuine ikhtilaf and difference of opinion between the ulama on this issue, then it can become permissible for a person to choose an opinion which is easier for them in order for them to avoid hardship. Now, this has to be done under the guise of a scholar or student knowledge themselves anyway. It's not for the layman just to say, okay, I think that one's going to fit my life better. You can't do that. That's not allowed. But it's a very important principle that is understood with the fuqaha. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah mentions it in his I'lam al-Muwaqqi'in, in a book where he talks about the adab of fatwa and the principles connected to it, etc. And he also mentions in there, and this is again, like I said, it's something which is well known in the books of usul al-fiqh and the books of fiqh, that the mufti and the person who is looking into the issue can take into consideration the hardships before he gives his final verdict. So, if we are going to say that it nullifies the fasting and a person is being asked to do, the COVID check, swabs, twice, 3, 4, 5 times a day, perhaps, I don't know, it's possible that it's got, at least even if it's on a daily reoccurrence, it's going to nullify the fast, and that whole Ramadan is going to be invalidated for that person. They'll have to make qada for the whole month. Would it be easier for us to take another ijtihadi view, which is valid, which is based on evidence, which brings about ease and concession? That is something for, again, the scholars to explore. But what we've already established, bi'idhnillah, is sufficient for us to know that the swabbing, the testing, and the vaccination itself, bi'idhnillah, will not invalidate the fast. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show us correctness and to make us firm on that, and to show us what is false and allow us to avoid it. هذا والله أعلم وصلى اللهم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.